My mother didn't whisper it. She didn't wait until dinner was over. She smiled, pointed at my two adopted daughters, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Keep the sweet one. Send the older girl back." The room fell silent. My 6-year-old burst into tears. My 14-year-old didn't say a single word. She simply stood, walked upstairs, and began packing the same suitcase she'd carried through 6 foster homes. She honestly believed she'd just lost another family. My relatives expected me to comfort my mother for speaking the truth. Instead, I made one decision that permanently changed who I called family. The first time 14-year-old Emma asked me if she needed permission to take a glass of water from the kitchen, I had to turn away before she saw the tears in my eyes. She wasn't asking because she was polite. She was asking because somewhere along the way, life had taught her that nothing in a house truly belonged to her. Not the food, not the furniture, not even the people. She had spent almost 8 years moving through foster homes where every new bedroom came with an invisible expiration date. The little girl standing beside her had never known anything different either. 6-year-old Lily slipped her tiny hand into mine almost instantly. She laughed easily, loved stuffed animals, and believed every flower she found deserved to be picked for someone she loved. But wherever Lily went, Emma followed. Not because anyone told her to, because she'd spent years acting like Lily's mother instead of her sister. When I first met them, Lily couldn't fall asleep unless Emma was sitting beside her bed. Emma couldn't eat until she knew Lily had finished her meal. Even during our first visit, Emma quietly pushed the last cookie on her plate toward her sister. "I'm not hungry," she whispered. She was lying. I could tell. But Lily smiled happily and ate it, without realizing what her sister had given up. That tiny moment told me everything I needed to know. When the adoption agency asked whether I wanted to adopt only Lily, because younger children were usually placed more quickly, I answered before the social worker had even finished the sentence.
"No."
She looked surprised. "I want both girls." She explained that adopting teenagers was harder. Many families worried about emotional trauma. Others believed older children never truly bonded. Some feared behavioral problems. I listened patiently before smiling. Then those families have never met Emma. 3 months later, the adoption became official. It wasn't perfect overnight. Emma thanked me every single time I cooked dinner. She apologized whenever she accidentally dropped something. If I bought her new clothes, she'd quietly ask how she could pay me back someday. Every time she said sorry, my heart broke a little more. Children weren't supposed to feel guilty for existing. Slowly, our house changed. Lily began running through the hallways instead of walking quietly. Emma stopped sleeping with her backpack beside the bed. The first night I noticed she had unpacked every single shirt into her dresser, I stood outside her bedroom smiling. For the first time, she believed she might actually be staying. Then something happened I'd dreamed about since the adoption. One Saturday morning, Lily raced into the kitchen, wrapped both arms around my waist, and shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear.
"Good morning, Mom."
Emma froze in the doorway. She looked at me nervously, as though she expected me to correct her sister. Instead, I hugged Lily tightly. "Good morning, sweetheart." Emma looked away quickly, but I still caught the small smile she tried so hard to hide. A week later, she quietly called me Mom for the first time too. Just once, barely above a whisper. But I heard it, and I don't think I've ever received a more precious gift. That's why I believed introducing the girls to my parents would be another happy milestone. My mother had called 3 times asking when she could finally meet her new granddaughters. Dad sounded excited too. I imagined family dinners, holiday traditions, birthday parties, the girls finally having grandparents who loved them. I spent the entire afternoon cooking everyone's favorite meals. Lily insisted on helping set the table. Emma carefully folded the napkins because she wanted everything to be perfect. "You don't have to impress anybody," I told her. She smiled softly. "I know," but she kept folding anyway. When my parents arrived, Mom immediately crouched down beside Lily. "Oh, aren't you just adorable?" Lily giggled. Within minutes, Mom was asking about her drawings, her favorite cartoons, and whether she liked chocolate cake. Emma stood quietly beside me, waiting.
hoping.
Mom barely looked at her. I told myself, maybe she was simply trying to make the younger child feel comfortable first. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Dad complimented the food. Lily happily talked about school. Emma mostly listened, smiling whenever her sister laughed. Then Mom placed her fork on the plate. She looked directly at me. "I've been thinking," she said calmly. The room became strangely quiet. She glanced toward Lily with a warm smile. Then her eyes shifted to Emma. Her expression changed completely. "You've got yourself a wonderful little girl." She paused. "But the older one?" Emma lowered her eyes. Mom folded her hands together. "If I were you," she said matter-of-factly, "I'd keep the sweet one and send the older girl back." No one breathed. Lily stared at her grandmother in confusion. Dad looked down at his plate without saying a word. Emma didn't cry. She simply whispered, "Excuse me." She stood up, walked silently toward the guest room. And a minute later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a suitcase zipper being pulled closed. The sound of that suitcase zipper cut through me like nothing else ever had. Not because it was loud, because it wasn't. Emma packed with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done it far too many times before. I hurried down the hallway and found her kneeling beside the small bed in the guest room. Every shirt I'd bought her only weeks earlier was folded neatly inside the suitcase. The framed photo of the three of us at the park lay carefully wrapped inside one of my sweaters. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She was simply preparing to leave. "Emma," I whispered. She looked up and forced a tiny smile. "It's okay."
No.
Nothing about this was okay. "What are you doing?" She zipped the suitcase shut before answering. "Grandma's right." I felt my stomach drop.
What?
She stood, brushing imaginary wrinkles from her jeans. "Lily deserves a family. So do you." She shook her head gently. "I'm older." As though those two words explained everything. "I've seen this before."
She wouldn't look me in the eye.
"They always keep the little kids." The hallway suddenly felt too small to breathe in. "They tell the older ones they're trying their best." She smiled sadly. "But everyone wants an easier life." Behind me, I heard tiny footsteps running. "Lily!" She threw herself around Emma's waist. "No!" Her little voice cracked. "You can't go." Emma hugged her sister tightly. "It's okay, Bug." "No." Lily began crying harder. "I don't want another mommy." The words shattered whatever strength I still had. Emma kissed the top of Lily's head. "You'll be okay." "I won't," Lily cried. "I only sleep because you're here." Emma looked at me with heartbreaking calm. "If she gets to stay." She swallowed hard. "That's enough." That sentence told me more about her past than every report I'd ever read. A 14-year-old child had already decided her own happiness didn't matter. Only her sister's. I walked over, placed one hand on the suitcase, and slowly pushed it away. Then I knelt, so I was looking directly into Emma's eyes. "Listen to me very carefully." She hesitated. "I didn't adopt one daughter." She blinked. "I adopted two sisters." Her lips trembled. "And there isn't a person on this earth who gets to decide you're only worth loving separately." For several seconds, she simply stared at me, as though she wanted to believe me, but didn't quite know how. Then the tears finally came. Not loud sobbing, just silent tears sliding down her face. Lily wrapped both arms around us. Soon all three of us were kneeling together in that hallway, holding on to each other. I finally stood. "Stay here." Emma wiped her eyes. "What are you going to do?" I picked up the suitcase and carried it back into her bedroom. "Finish dinner." Then I walked into the dining room. My parents were sitting exactly where I'd left them. Mom looked irritated. I knew she'd take it personally. Dad rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe we should have waited to discuss it. I remained standing.
No. Both of them looked at me.
"You should never have discussed it." Mom sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be so emotional. I'm being realistic. She's 14. She's been through too much. Children like that usually have trust issues. They bring problems. Lily still has a chance to grow up normally." Dad nodded once. "Your mother only means the younger child will adjust more easily." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do either of you know who packed Lily's lunches before they met me? Silence. Who made sure she brushed her teeth? Nothing. Who stayed awake when Lily had nightmares? Mom folded her arms. I assume the foster parents.
No.
I shook my head. Emma. They were just children. But Emma spent years protecting her little sister because no adult consistently did. Dad looked uncomfortable. Mom didn't. She leaned back in her chair. That proves my point. I stared at her. Excuse me? She's been forced to grow up too fast. That kind of damage doesn't just disappear. It follows people. Then she looked toward the hallway. You still have time to fix this. My voice became quieter than hers. The only thing that needs fixing is the belief that children have to earn love by being easy. No one spoke. I picked up my mother's purse and placed it gently on the table in front of her. I think dinner is over.
Dad stood slowly.
You're seriously asking us to leave?
No.
I answered calmly. I'm telling you. Mom grabbed her purse. As she reached the front door, she turned back one last time. You'll regret choosing the difficult one. I didn't answer. I simply closed the door. The house became silent. The next morning, just after 8 o'clock, my phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of the girl's adoption counselor. The moment I answered, her first words made my heart stop. There's something Emma told me yesterday that I think you need to hear. I answered the phone with a knot already forming in my stomach. The adoption counselor, Mrs. Parker, spoke gently. I'm sorry to call so early. It's all right, I replied. What's wrong? There was a brief silence. Then she said something I will never forget. Emma called our after-hours support line last night. Every muscle in my body tightened. She wanted to know what the process was if an adoptive parent decided to return an older child. I closed my eyes. Mrs. Parker continued softly. She wasn't angry. She wasn't accusing you of anything. She just wanted to be prepared.
Prepared.
As if losing another family was simply another appointment she needed to schedule. I told her, Mrs. Parker said, that I believed you loved her. I swallowed hard. She said she hoped you did too. After we hung up, I sat alone in the kitchen for several minutes. The house was quiet, but my heart wasn't. I realized something painful. Emma had moved into my house. She had smiled. She had laughed. She had even called me Mom. But deep inside, she had never truly believed she was home. I walked upstairs and knocked gently on her bedroom door. Come in. Emma was sitting on the floor beside the closet. The suitcase from the night before was still there. Only now it was open again. Not because she was unpacking, because she had never completely unpacked in the first place. Several shirts were still folded inside. A pair of shoes remained in their original box. Even her favorite stuffed rabbit stayed tucked safely into the corner of the suitcase. You never unpacked everything. She gave a tiny shrug. I didn't want to make too much of a mess. I sat beside her. That's not why. She stared quietly at the floor. Finally, she whispered, I thought.
She stopped.
I waited. I thought if I kept some things packed, it would hurt less when I had to leave. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I reached into the suitcase and picked up the little stuffed rabbit. I placed it carefully on the pillow. Next came the shoes. Then the sweaters. One by one, we unpacked everything together. Lily wandered into the room halfway through. What are you doing? We're finishing something. I smiled. She looked around before running downstairs. A few minutes later, she came back carrying colored paper and markers. She disappeared into her room. When she returned, she taped a handmade sign above Emma's bed.
It read,
Sisters stay together. Emma covered her mouth. Fresh tears filled her eyes. Lily hugged her tightly. I won't let anybody take you. Emma hugged her back. You never have to. Months passed. Something beautiful happened inside her home. Emma stopped apologizing every time she made a mistake. She laughed louder. She joined the school's photography club after discovering she loved taking pictures of sunsets. Lily became even more confident because the person she admired most finally felt safe enough to simply be a kid. Our home became filled with ordinary moments. Movie nights. Homework around the dining table. pancakes on Saturday mornings. Those ordinary moments turned out to be extraordinary healing. My parents never called for several months. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was my father. "We'd like to see the girls." I took a slow breath. "I have one condition." He waited. "You don't apologize to me. You apologize to Emma. And not because you want access to my house. Because she deserves to hear it." There was a long silence. "I understand," he finally said. Whether they truly changed or simply realized what they had almost lost, I can't say. But I knew one thing. Protecting my daughters would never again require my permission from anyone. Several weeks later, after everyone had gone to bed, I found Emma sitting on the back porch, watching the stars. I sat beside her. For a while neither of us spoke. Then she asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" "Always." She looked at me with the same uncertain eyes she had carried into my home months earlier. "You're really not sending me back?" I smiled. I took both of her hands in mine. "Emma, the day I signed those adoption papers, you stopped being a child looking for a family. You became my daughter. And daughters don't get returned." She broke into tears and wrapped her arms around me. Not the careful hug she'd always given before. This one was different. This one was the hug of a child who finally believed she belonged. Inside the house, Lily peeked through the window before running outside and joining us. The three of us stayed there beneath the stars, holding one another until the night grew quiet again. People often say family is something you're born into. I used to believe that too. Now I know something far more important. Real family is built by the people who choose you, protect you, and remind you, especially on your hardest days, that your place at the table was never something you had to earn.